Today I'm covering the case of Senah Houston, a 5-month-old child abused by a caretaker who just so happened to be her aunt after her mother's tragic passing. Our case takes place in Brisbane, Australia, where Sandra Houston and her twin sister Therese Houston grew up. They both stayed in the area and began their adult lives. Sandra met a man named Jason Bowman, and after dating for a while, the two finally decided to tie the knot. Jason worked as a chef, and together the couple had 4 kids. Her sister Therese went on to have 2 kids of her own. Sadly, in August of 2018, Therese passed away unexpectedly. She passed away in her bed after falling asleep from a heart condition she had developed about a month after giving birth to her youngest child, Senah. Obviously, no one had planned on this happening. It was so out of the blue, and there wasn't time to prepare for life after Therese. She had left behind 2 young kids. We all hope that when we eventually do go, it's after many years surrounded by our loved ones. But with Therese, it was a complete shock. No one was prepared, and they were having a really difficult time coping. Sandra was having an exceptionally difficult time. Therese and Sandra were sisters. They were twins. The bond between the two were tight, and they were the best of friends. There were a lot of logistics to go through after her sister's passing. The biggest being, who was going to take after her kids? Ultimately, responsibility of the caretaker went to Sandra and her husband Jason that very same month. Now, Sandra was in charge of caring for 6 kids. After the 3 months of caring for the new additions to the immediate family, things took a turn for the worse. On November 18, 2018, Jason had come home after a day of working. Everything was completely normal when he walked into their home, located in Waterford West, but then he walked into the couple's bedroom, and what he found really did scare him. On the floor lay Senah, the now 5-month-old child, on top of some bedding from Sandra and Jason's bed. That obviously isn't the place you place a child. So he picked her up, realized that she needed to be changed, and changed her diaper. After this, he went to place Senah in her crib, but immediately started crying. While it's not out of the ordinary for a baby to start crying, it is their only way of communicating. What isn't normal is for a child to go completely limp in your arms. They rushed Senah to the Logan Hospital, and the medical staff hooked her up to a ventilator as fast as they could. The doctors checked on Senah, and what they found was horrifying. She was suffering from shaking baby syndrome. She was comatose, but Sandra didn't seem to have any sense of urgency while bringing her niece in. Shaken baby syndrome occurs after violently shaking an infant or a toddler. This causes major brain damage. Oftentimes, this happens when a caretaker is frustrated by hearing constant crying and doesn't know how to cope. However, the name is debated in the medical community as there can be multiple reasons that the injuries can be caused. Senah's condition wasn't getting any better. In fact, her health was declining rapidly. She was transferred to the Queensland Children's Hospital, and sadly, she passed away the next day from her critical condition on November 19, 2018, around 1:30 in the afternoon. After about an hour, Jason and Sandra left the hospital. Even though Senah needed to be transported to another hospital due to her declining health, they didn't come back to check on her. The police started questioning the family soon after Senah died. When Sandra was questioned, she denied having anything to do with her niece's death. Jason had only walked in on Senah and had been at work all day, so he had a pretty solid alibi. And after that, the police weren't sure where to go next with the investigation. But the case was still open, and they were determined to put the pieces together. A month passed, and there still wasn't any explanation for what happened to Senah. It seemed like just another out-of-the-blue death in the family. Bad luck, perhaps? That is until Sandra walked into the police station and confessed. While speaking with officials, Sandra is quoted saying, "It was me. It must have been me. I was responsible. It is possible that I exerted too much force on the baby." After voluntarily giving up the information, she was charged with murder of her baby niece. In June of 2022, the trial of Sandra Houston began. Her defense team argued that Sandra was under incredible stress. Just 3 months prior, she had lost her twin sister unexpectedly, and then she started taking care of 2 more children on top of the 4 she already had. Jason, her husband, was always working and couldn't be there to help. Her attorney, Catherine Morgan, said that Sandra was barely able to keep up with her own kids, and now she has an infant to take care of. They argued that the injuries could have been caused by any of Sandra's other children. Kids play too hard and accidents happen. They also argued about the possibility of being in the shower with an adult, and she was dropped and squeezed too hard when she was picked up, causing the injuries. But the injuries were so severe. There were cuts and bruises everywhere. This seemed a lot worse than just a random accident. The police tried to state that Senah's injuries started appearing just days after Therese, her mother, had passed. This theory was quickly debunked because eyewitnesses remembered seeing Senah days before she died. and she looked happy and healthy, nothing out of the ordinary. Now, just days before her passing, her grandfather, Neville Houston, visited Sandra, Jason, and all the kids. And Senah was playing around, bouncing up and down in her bounce toy, awake, laughing, and smiling. However, some of Senah's injuries showed signs of healing, meaning she had been hurt before the day leading up to her death. Sandra Lee Houston pled guilty to the charge of manslaughter, although she was originally charged with murder. Manslaughter is known as the lesser charge. She pled guilty to grievous bodily harm and child cruelty. The defense team, however, did believe that Sandra's intentions was not to kill the child. During a psychological evaluation, a psychologist assessed that Sandra was suffering from an out-of-body experience, likely caused by her untreated grief and constant stress, which caused her to act out in a violent rage, ultimately ending the life of her niece. Sandra admitted to being annoyed by the child a lot. Sometimes when she was really frustrated, she would just smack her. She would never seem regretful of her actions because Senah seemed fine afterward. Ultimately, she didn't see anything wrong with these actions. While it doesn't sound like she was remorseful of her actions, her defense team argued that she was. She had lost her best friend, her world had been turned upside down. They believed that she knew she had done something wrong and felt bad for it. Sandra wrote a letter to the court explaining how deeply sorry and regretful she was for her actions. She was ashamed and incredibly guilty. Whether she really feels this way, only Sandra knows. Senah had only been under Sandra's care for 3 months before she died. Her defense team stated Miss Houston was suffering from a state of mind so different from that of ordinary human beings. Her ability to control that impulse to throw Senah was substantially impaired. Her capacity to control her impulses to handle the child properly was also impaired. Sandra was in jail, waiting for over 3.5 years for a sentencing trial. Once the sentencing trial started, the judge in the case, Thomas Bradley, sentenced Sandra Lee Houston to 9 years in prison. She must serve at least 80% before she's even eligible for parole. Because she waited so long for her next trial, she already served quite a bit of time. She'll be out of prison and eligible for parole in less than 4 years. While Sandra had no prior criminal history, her admittance of abuse towards Senah before her death showed that she had a pattern of behavior. And that is the tragic story of Senah Houston. What do you all think about this case? Everything about it just breaks my heart. There are a lot of layers to this story. I can see how stress and grief completely overtook Sandra, causing her to act out. Still, I'm not excusing that behavior. I'm just saying that the story has a little bit more of nuance. Have you ever heard of this case before? It's relatively new, and Sandra will be eligible for parole in just a few years. So we'll be able to see in real time how the story actually develops. Well, thank you all so much for watching this episode. If you're interested in hearing more cases, you can visit our page to check out other videos. We have quite a few. Until next time, I'm your host, Mack. Stay safe out there.